Massive big introduction because you know who this person is. She's been here before, we all watch her, she's lovely, she's a great storyteller. Please put your hands together for the one and only, please, Itchy Boots.
Everybody doing good? It's really nice to be here. I have taken a break from my journey to Japan to come to the UK on a book tour, and well, things have not quite worked out very well all the time. Did anyone see the last video? Yeah. Anyway, I'll get back to that. But the main thing, I was going to come here and talk about how it's like to ride around the world on a vintage motorcycle this time. I thought that might be an interesting topic to talk about. So I am heading to Japan, and I've just completed kind of the first leg of the journey. So I started with my bike in Istanbul. I don't know. I'll just continue. Moving on. Okay, so I started in Istanbul, and so first I rode through Turkey, and then I went into Iraq, and then into Iran, back into Iraq, to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and then I took a quick jump to Yemen, but that was on another motorbike. Then back on my motorbike, and then to Dubai, and that's been the first leg, and I think it's about 20,000 kilometers. I have to count it because my bike has no dashboard. I have nothing. I don't have, nothing. So I have to kind of manually count how many kilometers I'm doing. So it's about 20,000. And so I now came to the UK for the book tour. I just want to say thank you so much for everybody who already bought my book. Yay! I hope that you enjoy the read. It's a very, I shared a very personal side of the story in my book, and because so many of you bought it, it made it as a Sunday Times bestseller and a New York Times bestseller. You know what that means? That just means that more people are gonna learn about our world. Right? Adventure motorcycling, it is the best world, and so I'm really happy that more people get to know us now. So, but okay, I wanted to first talk a little bit about, the choice for a vintage motorcycle, and I thought maybe I should go back first to my general bike choices, which are doubtful sometimes maybe, according to the internet, and explain you a little bit what bikes I've ridden so far and why. Because I started my journey in India, and I rented a motorcycle first, which happened to be a Royal Enfield Himalayan, because fancy, because that's basically the only bike that was there. So I was like, okay, I'll take that. And then I liked it, so I was like, I'll buy that. So that was a Basanti, and I rode that motorcycle from India then back to the Netherlands. And then my next plan was like, okay, now I want to ride from Patagonia to Alaska. But this motorcycle that I bought in India had Indian plates. And so the paperwork was a little bit of a nightmare. And I crossed 25 countries as Ahmed Mohammed. It worked, but people said like, you're not going to get away with that in South America, or especially actually Mexico. They really want to make sure that you are actually really the owner. So then I was like, maybe I should have a motorbike with Dutch plates, and that's registered to my name. So in came the second, the Royal Enfield, Dano. And I rode it from Patagonia I made it only until Peru, and then COVID hit. So I had to escape. I had to get the bike out as well, and I went back to the Netherlands thinking, what am I going to do with my life now? And I basically just looked, where can I go? Which country is open? And at that point, Northern Europe was open. So I was like, off I go to North Cape. And so I was like, okay, I need a motorbike. And I did very little research. I just like Googled adventure motorbike, good for Northern Europe. And that gave me this one. So I bought a second-hand Honda CB500X because I knew like, okay, it's probably gonna be more tarmac, so it will be a good bike. It was a good bike, but I found it too heavy, you know, so I was actually terrified taking it even on gravel roads because I was like, oh, this thing is so heavy. So it was good for that trip, but I was kind of like, not really it. Then when I finished that trip, South America was still closed, so I couldn't back to Peru to continue. So I was like, where can I go now? South Africa opened. Yes. So off I go to South Africa, and I went to a motorcycle shop, and well, they had second-hand Honda, they had second-hand KTMs, but the KTMs were too pricey. I was like, that's too expensive. So then I bought the second-hand Honda CRF 250L. So cute. And I rode 5 months around South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe. Then tried my first rally on it and broke the subframe in half. So the bike now lives in a motorcycle museum in South Africa. You can go and see Savannah there. But riding that motorbike really introduced me to how it's like to ride a light bike. Because, okay, many people will still consider these to be light, but not really in my book, like 200 kilos, I find it still quite heavy. But when I rode that one, I really realized I really can go anywhere on this motorbike, you know, it doesn't matter. I can always, if I'm on a single trail, I can turn the bike around. If it falls upside down in a ditch, I know I can get it out of there. So, and it still took me everywhere, you know? So I was like, okay, something about this bike. So when I left it behind in the motorcycle museum, by that time, Peru was still closed, and I was done waiting. So I was like, I'm gonna restart my journey to Alaska in Ecuador, and I need a bike to do that. In comes the CRF 300 Rally, because I really liked the little Honda, and I was like, the problem mainly was the fuel range. I mean, it has a tiny tank, I can't remember, 7.8 liters or something. It's a nightmare. So I was like, I need a bigger tank, I just need more range, and I need maybe a little bit more body. I mean, who doesn't like, you know, you still want to feel like you're riding a motorcycle, right? Not a moped. So that bike kind of ticked the boxes. So after 2 second-hand Hondas, I bought my first new Honda and shipped it to Ecuador, and then rode to Alaska and completely, how do you say that, revamped it. You know, did a whole work over to make sure that the bike was in perfect condition again, because then I was like, let's do Africa. So then I rode with that bike from Morocco down West Africa to the south, and then back up on the east side. And then, well, I had an accident. I'm not the first one probably to talk about an accident. Mine luckily wasn't so bad, but yeah, it took me out for a little bit. And at that point I was like, okay, I'm also gonna retire the motorbike. You know, I think I was like, this is it now. I've taken this bike for a very long way. It's done its job. I think it's time to retire it.
You got it?
In comes this baby. Yeah, she's pretty. She's pretty. So this is my current motorcycle. It's a Yamaha XT600Z. Her name is Frankie. And the reason of the name is because the motorcycle is basically completely stripped back down to the frame and completely rebuilt up again, but then also using a lot of different parts from this motorcycle, but like models from late 80s, early 90s, which had already like in some ways slightly better parts here and there. So it's a 600cc single cylinder, has about 40 horsepower. And when, well, I can't really say I rebuilt the bike, I obviously did nothing. But Moritz, who has a business called Motor Leads in Germany, he's been building and working with these bikes for 35 years. And so I had the pleasure to work with him, or look at him work and admire it. And so, but the vision we kind of had for the motorcycle was like, it needs to be in a good shape, because I don't, you're gonna have challenges, but I don't want to buy a bike that has been sitting doing nothing for 30 years and it's gonna break down around every corner. That's a bit too much. A little bit of trouble does well on YouTube, but you can't have trouble every day. So I was like, the bike needs to be in a proper good state. So it has the engine is completely rebuilt, so it's basically a new engine, a new gearbox, and then the parts on the bike kind of vary from between 1982 until 2024. So for example, the rims they were as a spare for the 1982 Dakar Rally, laying there as a spare part for a motorcycle, never been used, and now being used for the first time on my bike, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, she's a little bit of a Frankenstein project, but we try to kind of keep like the original look. I didn't want to change too much with like a modern headlight or stuff like that. I was like, who needs some light anyway? But what we did do was, for example, change the indicator lights, because in the 80s they had these massive blinkers, and I know like, okay, I dropped the bike once and it's gonna break off. So there we chose like to use like smaller blinkers that are not gonna break off. And well, Frankie came to life. Now, maybe you wonder, okay, so but why after all this history with all these bikes did I go for a vintage bike this time? And after the third Honda, after Alaska, that's the name of the third Honda, I knew, okay, it's no more Honda for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that it was already my third Honda in a row, and when you do a little bit of social media, people are going to assume that you're being sponsored. And I was never sponsored by Honda. Like, there was absolutely nothing that Honda did for me, which is fine. But I was like, nobody's going to believe me if I go again for a Honda, right? So I was like, okay, it has to be a different brand. The second reason why I was like, maybe I don't want to ride a Honda anymore was, okay, this happened. Somewhere in West Africa, somewhere between Sierra Leone and Liberia, the motorcycle started making a really strange sound. Yeah, you hear it, right? It's not good. So I sent this video to the Honda dealer where I bought the motorcycle, and I said, my engine's making a strange sound. And they said, well, we give it 200 kilometers max and then you're gonna blow up the engine. I was like, oh, that's no bueno if you are in the jungles of Liberia, on your own. So I said, okay, but what can we do, So I asked the Honda dealer, like, okay, maybe now it's time to reach out to Honda and ask if they can maybe help me. And, well, why did I get into this story? So their response was, okay, then you need to buy a new Honda and in Europe and have somebody take out the engine and then ship it to Africa and then change it. And I was like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. So I said, I expressed my disappointment, and then they changed it to, okay, now Honda will buy a second-hand Honda, take out the engine, but then I still need to pay for that engine to go to Africa and change it. So at that point I was like, I don't think I want to do that, So I said, okay, well, I'll just keep on going. If the bike just, falls apart in a pile of rubbish, I'm just gonna abandon it, buy a $1,000 Chinese local motorbike and just continue from there, and might be fun as well. But then, there are some pretty decent good mechanics in Western Africa, if you search hard enough. And one of them said, listen to it, and he said, I know, it's just your cam chain tensioner, which is not a big deal, it's just a part, you order it, you change it, problem solved, and the bike never had any problem anymore. So of course that was the good news, huh? So the bike has done incredibly well, I absolutely love that motorcycle, but I also realized, even though I don't, want to be per se a sponsored rider, it is really nice if you ride a motorcycle from a brand that you feel like if I'm really into trouble, they're gonna help me, And especially because my YouTube channel always must go on. So I can't say, okay, I'm gonna wait here 3 months for an engine to arrive, because then, all of you are gonna be like, hey, what the heck, where are our videos? So I always must keep going, there's no time for delay, So in that sense, it really helps me if, you have a brand that is willing to jump in and help you with that. So, and then finally the third reason, because I do have to admit, like I said before, that CRF 300 Rally was a perfect bike for me. It was perfect, you know, it was not too heavy, it had a good range, it was reliable. So I was like, okay, what other Honda would be better than this one? And actually none, you know, I was like, I don't want to go to an Africa Twin, it's too heavy. I don't want to go for a 450, it's, you know, maintenance interval is too high. So I was like, this is actually already the best one, but I'm not going to buy the same bike again, you know, that's boring. So I thought, okay, let's move on and look for something else. And when I think about a motorcycle, yeah, it's always a compromise between, I don't want it to be heavy, so then you go towards enduro, but I also want a long maintenance interval. I don't want to have to change oil every 1,000 kilometers, or every 100 hours, or counting in hours or something. I do need a big range, you know, I want to have like a 400 kilometer range in terms of fuel. Those are the things that are important for me. So then I started looking, okay, what other brands are there? Because the brand is important, and what other motorbikes are there? And then I started thinking like, okay, I quite like this Yamaha T7, but the T7, for me, it's just a bit too heavy and too tall. And that was my thought. And now that I'm actually riding one through the UK, it's still my thought, you know? It rides really well, and it handles, to be fair, better obviously than Frankie, which I think you can expect after 40 years of developing the bike. You may hope that it handles better, and it does, but I still feel this bike is really heavy. So if that bike is upside down in a ditch, what am I gonna do, right? So then I started thinking, okay, but adventure bikes, you know, I don't know what all these brands are doing by making them so heavy. I don't understand it personally, but maybe you're all really strong guys, probably, but for me it's not so great. So I started thinking, okay, maybe if all these modern bikes are too heavy for me, maybe I should, you know, look at older bikes, because they didn't always used to be so big and heavy, right? And then on top of that, a lot of more modern bikes, not all of them of course, but they have so much electronics and they're complicated, and I am in no way a mechanic, and I will never will be. At some point you have to accept, these are things that I'm good at, and these things are just never gonna, it's just not my thing. I'm just not good at it. But even if I was a mechanic, you still need like computers to read out some, you know, errors on some motorcycles and stuff. And that's fine if you're in Europe or in, I don't know, Northern America or something, but in a lot of the countries where I go to, like, what are you gonna do, you know, if you run into trouble? So my conclusion was, I need a bike to be simple, you know, as simple as possible. It needs to be fixable by any guy on the side of the road with a hammer, preferably, or a screwdriver, or I don't know what tools he has, but that's gonna be helpful for me. So, then the other thing that I was considering is, okay, I thought, okay, now I've been riding around the world on a motorbike, I can do that. I think now I know that I can do that. So then it becomes boring, you know, I'm like, I've done that now, let's spice it up a little bit, you know. So for me, I was also like, I just need to find another challenge, you know. So, okay, I can ride around the world on a modern new motorbike. What can I do on a vintage bike, you know? That's for sure gonna, you know, throw all sorts of other challenges at me. So I was kind of like, this sounds appealing to me. And then the final reason is just a love for motorcycles. I mean, like, when I saw Moritz working on that motorbike, it was just an absolute joy, you know, to see somebody building a motorcycle with so much knowledge and so much love for this machine, that I was like, yeah, I already fell in love with the bike before it was even finished, you know? And yeah, do you understand? Yeah, so I was like, this bike already means so much more to me than a brand new motorcycle that just comes out of the factory, right? So, there we had Frankie. Now, I did already have some trouble with Frankie. And so, I mentioned the trouble that I had, right? So, this is in Iraq, when I had a flat tire. Okay, no big deal, right? But when I posted this picture, so many people were like, you should have ridden a Honda. Really? Right. Anyway, so I had a couple of loose bolts. And not a big deal. Some of it, sorry Moritz, but they forgot to put Loctite. Yeah, can happen. So then I put Loctite, never got loose again. Some might get loose again, but hey, come on, it's a 600 cylinders. Yeah. Of course, it shakes like hell, this bike, you know. So of course you're gonna have a loose bolt sometimes. That's part of the job. Then I had a few bent gear shifters because I always try to fall on the left, and that's where it is. And again, there many people said like, oh, but you should have had engine guards. Well, that wouldn't work because for this motorcycle, the engine guards that were made at the time are super flimsy, are totally useless. So if I would want, like, there's no now aftermarket engine guards for a motorcycle from 1987. Like, who makes that? Nobody. So then I would have to like custom make this whole thing. Too much time, too much money, not necessary. I have a bash plate that actually does protect the engine. That's the main thing. A gear shifter will also bend actually if you do have engine guards, because on my Honda with engine guards, I also bend the gear shifter, you know. So also it's not really a big deal. It's bent, you bend it back. You can do that like 3-4 times. Then it breaks. Then you go to a welder. He fixes it. Off you go. So not really a big deal. Then I drained the battery. Who hasn't done that? Left the lights on a bit too long, started a few too many times. But luckily, this motorcycle has an electric start and a kickstart. So I drained the battery sitting inside a wadi in Saudi Arabia, so that's a dry riverbed, in thick gravel. You're not gonna start a motorcycle in thick gravel, but you are gonna start it when you have a Kickstarter. So it's like, whoop, and off you go. That's really nice. Now, the biggest kind of thing. Okay, I've had 2 rescues by 2 times where I had to put the motorbike on the truck and bring it to a mechanic. And it took me a really long time to figure out what on earth the problem was. Like, sometimes the diagnostics of like, what is the problem can be the most difficult thing. And later it turned out that in the build we added an extra fuel filter. An extra aftermarket fuel filter just for extra safety, extra protection. And the morning that the bike first suddenly started to cut out, that morning I had changed that fuel filter. I was like, oh, it's probably time, I should change this. And I felt really chuffed with myself, like, look at me, like, taking care of my motorbike. So I changed the filter, and then, yeah, later that day, suddenly the bike just started cutting out of nowhere. So, but in my thinking, I was like, you know, you go past all the things, can it be this, can it be this, can it be this? And I thought, it can't be the fuel filter, because I had just changed that. So it took me a really long time to finally figure out that that fuel filter was just faulty from the beginning, and it wasn't letting fuel through, causing it to just cut out. And in the meantime, I had changed parts, and oh my god, I didn't even put everything on YouTube because it was such a nightmare. Anyway, it was just a faulty aftermarket fuel filter, so also was a really big deal. And then, well, yeah, then the motorcycle got stolen in Iraq. Yeah, so now I have had 2 Yamaha T7 stolen from me. The 1987 one in Iraq and the brand new T7 in Swansea, Wales. Okay, I found both of them back, luckily, because I hid AirTags in them. It's really fun to find a good spot. But yeah, if you find a good spot, they're never going to find it, and you will find your motorcycle, at least, or that's the idea. But unfortunately, with this motorcycle, so when the thieves stole it, in a lot of these old motorcycles, if you cut the wiring loom in the right spot, you can kickstart the motorcycle without a key. So they tried that, but they cut it in the wrong place, and that means the motorcycle is just not going anywhere at all. So when I found the motorcycle back, I realized they cut the entire wiring loom. But then, good thing, Moritz, magical Moritz, he already installed a second wiring loom on the motorcycle. So very unusual. So the motorcycle is full of spare parts, and everything is already built into the bike in twos. So it means if one part breaks, all I have to do is unplug, plug in the next one, and off I go. So it's really built to help me out in situations where I really have to go. Like, I cannot just fix it, but like situations I really need to get myself out of, I can save myself because all of these parts and second wiring loom is already in place. So all I had to do was change 3 wires, and then the bike ran without any electricity, There was no key necessary anymore, it had no lights, but to start it, all I had to do was kick it, and to stop it, let go of the clutch or just unplug a wire. And so I rode 1,000 kilometers through Iraq and Iran like that. So my right leg is still more muscly from all the kicking the motorcycle. But at the time, so I was kicking like crazy, especially in the morning. During the day, I usually got it in the first kick, so that was fine. But in the morning, sometimes, you know, you're kicking. And then a lot of people were like, oh, this bike is terrible, terrible. But I mean, it got me out, you know. I was like, I don't understand you people, you know. Like, it got me out of Iraq until I reached Kuwait, where I could change the entire wiring loom. And the bike was just back to perfect. So I think it's an advantage. If the thieves in Wales had got any wires on the new T7, well, I mean, I'm no mechanic, but I think you have a problem. Yeah. But anyway, so the point is, I have noticed that every single time I've had these issues that I mentioned now with this motorcycle, the internet always told me, your Honda's never broke down. Just my opinion, but I think you need to get another Honda. You have nothing but trouble with this one. And I don't know. I bet that Noralie switches back to a new small Honda for her next season. You know, you should be on a Honda. Anyway. And the funny thing is, I was like, did you guys forget everything I had with the Honda? And I can understand why, because I mean, in the videos, you may see like 10 seconds of a problem. But for me, that made a bigger impression, you know. It was often much harder to deal with than only 10 seconds in a video. So I remember everything, but I thought maybe if you guys have forgotten, I thought I'll create a little refresher of what went down with the Honda.
So we need a big weight.
I went through I said. The wheel bearings had to be replaced. So this is the reflector that broke.
This is the bad news. Alaska fell over, broke my mirror, and my handguard is bent. So now my clutch lever, it gets stuck.
This happened. I broke another mirror. Now I broke my right side mirror. So see, my mirror just... my throttle is a bit stuck. I hear something ticking. Oh, I also have a red light coming on my dashboard. That's no bueno.
Look, it's leaking so much, it's just dripping there. All of this is covered until my foot pegs covered in oil.
Alaska is turning into part KLR, part KTM. I have a flashing light. ABS. Who needs ABS anyway, right? I have completely slammed chain guard. Look at that. Completely broken. I bent my gear shifter against the engine case.
There are two enormous holes in my airbox.
Okay, I have a serious problem. Alaska won't start. It doesn't start. That moment you really want the bike to start. Too hot.
So we're going to drain the fuel from my tank because it's most likely mixed with water.
So the good news is that they are going to work on Alaska today. I'm stuck.
stuck here. Underneath. Is enough. No, no. Oh, that's unfortunate. Oh, there's my windshield. Oh no, I completely lost my mirror. Yeah, there it went. Oh no. My start button. That's it.
This is when the bike fell in the river, trying to get into the complex. I don't know why I look so happy there, but I wasn't.
I don't know. I think it's the connection between this tank and the main tank. I gotta do something about this tank. Careful of.
So much fun. Things also didn't go quite well always. So the bottom line basically is that it doesn't matter what bike I'm riding, I will destroy it. You know? So yeah, that's just part of it. And I think like with so many of the mishaps I've had, you know, I always get a lot of probably very well-meant advice on like, but you should have done this, and if you have done that, that wouldn't have happened. But the thing is just, you cannot prepare and live in this illusion that if you prepare really well for a trip, that nothing is going to go wrong. You know, that's just not reality. You know, if you, sure, maybe if you only stay on tarmac, you're a lot safer. Like, in all these years, I've only fell one time on tarmac, and it was actually quite at the beginning in India. But for the rest, I don't fall down on tarmac. You know, you fall down when you try, I don't know, across a river and do all this off-road fun, right? So, yeah, you just know from the beginning, if you're gonna do all of that, things are gonna go wrong. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know, because ultimately, whatever you do in life, you're going to have problems and challenges. But as long as you enjoy solving those problems and challenges, you are on a pretty good path, you know. So I get all these problems, but I enjoy solving them. So ultimately, you know, it works out. So that was kind of like, yeah, the story that I wanted to bring is that, you know, you try to find a motorcycle that fits you well, and you try to prepare, but ultimately, you know, the world is going to throw all sorts of stuff at you, but that's when it becomes interesting, right? Because like all these moments, that's why I remembered all of this, because those are the most memorable things that happened, because in the moments that it all went wrong, and I, you know, managed to get myself into trouble somewhere, and had to go and find locals to help me, you know, those were the meeting of people that stayed with me and that I remember, and that I write about in my book, whereas the days that it all went smoothly and you had a nice riding day, scenery was beautiful, I don't remember those days, you know. So, and luckily I don't have to go search for trouble, because it will always find me anyway. So I'll have plenty of that. To be honest though, now that I'm riding through the UK, I do have to admit I was a little bit worried that I was going to be bored. Because for the simple reason that, you know, I'm really addicted to that adrenaline high, you know? So it's like, going through slightly more dangerous countries, or you know, like Iraq or Yemen or even Mexico, it's such a rush, you know. So it's addictive. So I want more of it. So I thought, oh, but if I go to the UK, you know, how's it going to be like? And am I going to, you know, also make interesting videos? But hey, then my bike gets stolen, and I'm like, I'm sorted. But no, to be fair, I'm honestly saying this, I have been so far loving my ride through the UK. I've also been really lucky with the weather, that obviously also helps. But it has been really, I'm really enjoying it, and I have to just try to shut myself up, because otherwise all the time I go like, oh, it's so cute, oh, look at this cat, it's just so cute. So I'm really enjoying it here, and maybe it's also good for me to just have a little bit of a break from all the really craziness, because if you remember where I left in Dubai, and if you kind of watch what's going on in the world, then you might also realize that the next part of the journey is gonna be wild. So yeah, that's gonna, yeah, so after I finish the book tour, I'll be going up to Scotland next. After I finish that, then yeah, I'm gonna go back to Frankie and brace myself for what's coming next. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. For those who like to buy my book, it's very recommendable. I'll be staying here now on the table, signing books. So if you want, you can pop over. And for everybody else, enjoy the festival, and see you next time.